My name is Clara Sterling, and for most of my life, I believed I was built from the soft things, river clay, morning mist, the gentle patience of my grandmother's hands at her loom. I thought my strength was in my ability to bend, to absorb, to yield. I was wrong. My strength, as it turned out, was a bedrock I hadn't yet learned to stand on. The revelation began on a Tuesday, a day so quintessentially Portland it was almost a cliché. A fine, persistent drizzle slicked the windows of our craftsman home in the Laurelhurst neighborhood. The air smelled of damp earth and roasting coffee beans from the shop down the street. Inside, it was a pocket of warmth and light. My 3-year-old daughter, Sophie, was humming a tuneless little song, carefully arranging rainbow-colored wooden blocks on the living room floor, her small world an oasis of perfect, ordered peace. I was in my favorite armchair, a cup of herbal tea warming my hands, when the email chimed on my laptop. The subject line was 2 words, stark and sterile, moving forward. It was from my husband, Julian. I clicked it open, a knot of vague unease tightening in my stomach. What I saw stole the air from my lungs. It was a scanned copy of divorce papers, his signature a confident, arrogant slash at the bottom. Pinned below it, like a trophy, was a photograph. There was Julian, his arm draped possessively around a woman with sharp, beautiful features and unnervingly bright eyes. Her name, I would soon learn, was Veronica Kane. They were standing in the great room of our coastal home in Seabrook, the one I'd poured my heart and soul into. The Pacific Ocean churned gray and wild through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind them. Veronica was laughing, her head thrown back, while Julian smiled at the camera with an expression of pure, unadulterated triumph. He was wearing the cashmere sweater I'd bought him for his last birthday. The words of his email were a series of calculated blows. Clara, the house is mine now. Veronica and I have moved in. It's best for everyone if you don't fight this. The deed is in my name. It's clean and simple. I'll be in touch about Sophie. My teacup rattled in its saucer. The tremor started in my hands and spread through my entire body, but it wasn't fear. It was a deep, seismic shift, the ground of my life breaking apart to reveal something harder underneath. For 8 years, I had been Julian's wife, the quiet, artistic partner to his sharp, corporate ambition. He thought he could excise me from our shared life with a single, brutal email, that he could steal the sanctuary I had built, a house purchased with every cent of profit from my company, Hearthstone Textiles, and simply install his new life within its walls. He was expecting tears. He was expecting a frantic, pleading phone call. He had forgotten, or perhaps had never truly known, who I was. I am the woman who took a single loom and a passion for natural dyes and spun it into a nationally recognized sustainable textile company. I am the woman who grew up in a small mill town in the Oregon foothills, where my father taught me that integrity was the only currency that truly mattered. We don't crumble. We rebuild. Sophie looked up from her blocks, her dark curls bouncing. Mama, look. A tower. Her eyes, the same deep, thoughtful brown as my own, shone with uncomplicated pride. On the mantelpiece, a silver-framed photo caught my eye. Julian and me, on our wedding day, standing under a canopy of ancient Douglas firs. We looked so young, so certain we were a team. 8 years. Now, I was a mother who would walk through fire for her child, a business owner who had quietly amassed a small fortune while my husband patted me on the head for my charming little hobby, and a wife who had been so profoundly betrayed it felt like a physical amputation. Julian had always been dismissive of Hearthstone Textiles' success, even as its valuation quietly eclipsed his own handsome salary. When we bought the Seabrook house 2 years ago, he'd insisted his name be on the deed. For tax purposes, Clara, he'd said with practiced ease. It simplifies the estate planning. I'd been hesitant, but my lawyer and dear friend, Eleanor, had drawn up a meticulous trust agreement and bill of sale, tracing every dollar from Hearthstone Textiles accounts directly to the purchase. The documents were ironclad, a quiet shield I never thought I'd have to use. Julian, who found details tedious, had never bothered to read them. I took a deep, steadying breath, the scent of bergamot from my cooling tea a small, grounding comfort. I knelt beside Sophie and kissed the top of her head. Then I walked back to my laptop. I didn't block his number or his email. That felt like running. Instead, I typed a short, simple reply. Julian, I think you've made a mistake. A significant one. I hit send. Then, turning back to my daughter, I forced a smile that felt more like a promise. Let's finish your tower, sweet pea. Let's build it all the way to the sky. Julian Croft had fundamentally misjudged the woman he married. He saw the soft-spoken artist, not the tenacious strategist. He saw the supportive wife who celebrated his every promotion at Zenith Solutions, the consulting firm where he was a rising star, not the CEO who was single-handedly disrupting an industry. He assumed my days were a gentle rhythm of playdates and color swatches, that I'd be too consumed by motherhood to notice the slow, deliberate erosion of our life together. But I was raised on stories of resilience. I had learned to read the subtle shifts in the wind, to feel the ground for tremors long before the earthquake. And I was about to remind my husband that the quietest rivers often have the strongest currents. Looking back, the signs were there, faint as hairline fractures in a porcelain cup. I had simply been too busy, too trusting, to see them for what they were. About 6 months ago, Julian's work trips had started to increase in frequency. He claimed Zenith had a major new client on the coast and that he needed the solitude of our Seabrook house to focus. The city is too distracting, Clara, he'd sigh, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. I need the ocean to think. I was in the midst of launching a new line of hand-dyed linens for Hearthstone Textiles and navigating the beautiful, chaotic world of toddlerhood with Sophie. I let it go. I wanted to be the supportive partner. He would return from these work trips distant and agitated, his phone permanently attached to his hand. When I'd ask about the project, he'd become defensive. It's high-level corporate strategy, Clara. It's complex. The unspoken addendum hung in the air. Too complex for you. The irony was a bitter pill. For the past 4 years, at his request, I had been quietly managing his personal investment portfolio, leveraging my own research into sustainable markets to triple his returns. He never asked how I did it. He just enjoyed the results. My trust in him was a product of my upbringing. In my hometown, a handshake meant something. Your word was your bond. My parents, a librarian and a woodworker, had instilled in me a deep-seated belief in the inherent goodness of people. It was a beautiful way to see the world, but a dangerously naive one. When I met Julian 8 years ago, I was just starting to sell my first woven scarves at the Portland Saturday Market. He was a charismatic MBA graduate from Stanford, brimming with confidence and polish. He loved telling our friends how he'd helped me conceptualize the business, how his input had been crucial to my success. The truth was, Hearthstone Textiles was born from my own solitary nights of work, my own relentless pursuit of quality, my own vision. Julian's contribution had been applause from the sidelines. The Seabrook house was my dream made manifest. It wasn't just a property, it was a testament to my work, a sanctuary I had envisioned for Sophie and me. A place of quiet contemplation, of long walks on the misty beach, of falling asleep to the sound of the waves. Putting Julian's name on the deed was a compromise, a concession to his pride. I had only agreed because Eleanor, ever my protector, had insisted on the legal fortifications that now seemed like a stroke of genius. Now, holding Sophie's small, warm hand in mine, I felt the sting of those overlooked moments, Julian's late nights in our home office, his sudden, casual questions about Hearthstone Textiles' supply chain, the faint, patronizing praise he'd offer when a major publication wrote about my work. I had been so immersed in the joy of creating a family, creating a business, that I had failed to see he was deconstructing our life, piece by piece. But as Sophie leaned her head against my leg, her trust in me absolute and unconditional, I knew this wasn't just my fight anymore. It was for her. It was for the future I had so carefully, so lovingly, tried to build for us. I carried Sophie, now sleepy from her architectural endeavors, up to her room and settled her in for her nap. Her small, even breaths were a rhythm of peace in a world that had suddenly become a battleground. I went to my office, a light-filled room overlooking our garden, and opened my laptop. My fingers were steady now, imbued with a cold, clear purpose. First, I forwarded the entire trust agreement for the Seabrook house to Eleanor. The file contained digital copies of every bank transfer, every invoice, every receipt, all originating from Hearthstone Textiles business accounts to which Julian had no access. Documents he had dismissed as lawyer nonsense. Next, I logged into the security system for the coastal house. It was a discreet, high-end system I'd had installed myself, citing the property's isolation as a concern. Julian had waved it off as another of my overly cautious tendencies. He had no idea the system included cloud-based storage for all video and audio. He had no idea I could see everything. The archives were a timeline of his betrayal. His solitary work trips were anything but. I watched him and Veronica walk through the door, their arms around each other. I saw them drinking my favorite wine on the deck, sleeping in our bed. The camera in the living room captured them laughing as Veronica tried on my jewelry, which I kept in a small, antique box on the dresser. My heart seized when I saw her pick up a silver locket, my grandmother's locket, the one thing I cherished most from my childhood. She clipped it around her neck, preening for Julian, who kissed her shoulder. My phone buzzed. It was my assistant, Chloe. She was more than an employee. She was a friend, a brilliant, fiercely loyal woman who had been with Hearthstone Textiles since the early days. Clara, I'm so sorry. I saw the email forward from Eleanor. Are you okay? What do you need? I need you to be my eyes and ears, Chloe, I said, my voice tight. This woman, Veronica. Find out who she is. Chloe was a digital native, a wizard of the internet. It took her less than 20 minutes. Got her, she messaged back, a link to an Instagram profile attached. I clicked, my stomach churning. It was a curated highlight reel of their affair. A photo of them clinking champagne glasses at a restaurant I recognized from a credit card statement Julian had told me was a client dinner. A picture of Veronica wearing one of my silk robes on the deck of the beach house, captioned, "Home is wherever I'm with you." The post was dated 8 months ago. 8 months ago. I was in my 3rd trimester with Sophie, my ankles swollen, my body aching, feeling the profound and lonely exhaustion of late pregnancy. While I was preparing to bring our child into the world, he was building another life, another home, with another woman. The betrayal was not a single, impulsive act. It was a long, calculated campaign of deceit. I hugged myself, a cold dread seeping into my bones. But then I thought of my mother, a woman who faced down condescending bank managers and dismissive bosses with a quiet dignity that was its own form of armor. She taught me to value what I build. I would not let Julian and his new partner turn my life's work, my family's sanctuary, into the backdrop for their sordid romance. Every photo, every video, every lie was another stone I could use to rebuild my foundation, stronger and higher than before. I whispered it to the empty room, a vow to myself and to my sleeping daughter. We're taking it all back, Sophie. Every last piece. This was no longer about a broken heart. It was about reclaiming my home, my legacy, and my self-respect. My anger, which had been a slow-burning fire, turned to ice when I decided to check our finances. I opened the banking app for the joint savings account we shared, the one where I had diligently deposited a portion of Hearthstone Textiles' profits for the last 3 years. It was meant to be Sophie's college fund, a safety net for her future. The balance was $87,500. Or it had been yesterday. Today, it was $12.47. A dizzying wave of nausea washed over me. Julian had cleaned it out. A single transfer, made yesterday morning, to an account I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I navigated to my personal and business accounts. Relief, sharp and immediate, flooded through me. They were untouched. Years ago, when Hearthstone Textiles began to turn a significant profit, Eleanor had advised me to structure my finances with impenetrable firewalls. Separate banks, separate tax IDs, layers of security that Julian, with his surface-level understanding of my business, would never be able to breach. My instinct for self-preservation, an instinct I was only now beginning to appreciate, had saved my company. I called Eleanor, my voice surprisingly steady. He took Sophie's college fund, Eleanor. Within an hour, she had called in a favor with a forensic accountant. The initial findings were worse than I imagined. It wasn't just the college fund. For the past year, Julian had been systematically siphoning money from our joint accounts, smaller transfers from our checking, cashing out shared bonds I had forgotten we had. The total was nearly $250,000. He had also made several attempts to access my business servers from our home IP address, but my robust cybersecurity, a system designed by a top firm, had blocked him every time. He was sloppy. He was arrogant. He thought I wouldn't notice. While I was on the phone with Eleanor, a frantic message from Chloe popped up. "Clara, you have to see this." She sent me a link to a private social media group, a collection of screenshots from Veronica's posts to her close friends. I read them, and the last vestiges of grief were burned away by a white-hot rage. There were pictures of them at the Seabrook house, mocking my art choices, my taste in books. One post read, "Living the dream. My brilliant man is finally leaving his boring Earth Mama wife. We're about to take her for everything she's worth. She's too busy making mud pies or whatever to notice, lol." Another, with a picture of Hearthstone Textiles' latest catalog, said, "Can you believe people pay for this stuff? Julian says her little weaving hobby is a joke, but at least it's funding our future." A joke. My company, which employed 50 people, paid fair living wages, and was pioneering sustainable practices in a deeply exploitative industry, was a joke to them. Julian's greatest miscalculation was believing his own narrative. He thought my focus on ethics and artistry meant I was soft, unacquainted with the brutal realities of business. He forgot that to build what I had built, I had to outmaneuver and outthink corporate behemoths, just like his employer, Zenith Solutions. I looked over at Sophie's room, where she was beginning to stir from her nap. Her soft murmurs were a stark contrast to the ugliness on my screen. Julian wasn't just stealing my money, he was trying to steal my dignity, to rewrite my story into one of a fool who was easily duped. I would not allow it. Chloe's next discovery, however, shifted the entire landscape. It elevated this from a story of personal betrayal to one of calculated corporate warfare. "Clara," she said, her voice low and serious over the phone. "Veronica Kane. Her father is Arthur Kane." The name hit me like a physical blow. Arthur Kane was the CEO of Zenith Solutions. This wasn't just an affair. It was an alliance. Julian hadn't just fallen for a younger woman. He had strategically attached himself to the CEO's daughter. A quick search by Eleanor's legal team uncovered a flurry of internal Zenith memos. Julian was being fast-tracked for the position of Chief Financial Officer. The promotion was set to be announced in a matter of days. A CFO role would not only be a massive step up for him, but it would give him unprecedented access to the kind of market intelligence that could be used to crush a competitor. A competitor like Hearthstone Textiles. Suddenly, his questions about my supply chain, his interest in my expansion plans, his attempts to hack my servers, it all clicked into place. This was a coordinated attack. They weren't just trying to bleed me dry personally, they were trying to dismantle my company. Hearthstone Textiles' commitment to ethical sourcing and transparency was a direct threat to the business models of many of Zenith's clients, fast fashion giants who relied on cheap labor and opaque practices. We were a thorn in their side, and they had found a way to pull it out from the inside. Eleanor's team, digging deeper, unearthed a chain of emails between Julian and Veronica, sent from their private accounts, but recovered from a cloud backup. The messages laid their plan bare, stretching back over a year. One from Julian, sent 6 months ago, was particularly damning. "Once I'm CFO, your father can help me leverage Zenith's resources. We'll undercut Hearthstone Textiles suppliers and flood the market. Her little green empire won't know what hit it." They had plotted this while I was carrying his child, while I was awake at 3 a.m. nursing our newborn daughter, believing we were a family. The memory of my own father, who lost his job at the mill after a hostile corporate takeover, flashed through my mind. He had been a casualty of men like Julian and Arthur Kane. I had built Hearthstone Textiles to be the antithesis of that world, a place of fairness, sustainability, and humanity. And now they were trying to destroy it. Chloe's voice pulled me back to the present. "He's trying again, Clara. Right now." Another attempt to access the R&D server from the Seabrook IP address. I stared out my office window at the rain-soaked garden, at the vibrant green of the ferns I had so carefully planted. I turned to the speakerphone, where Eleanor was waiting patiently. My voice was calm, devoid of the storm raging inside me. "Eleanor," I said, "let's hit them where it hurts." I was no longer just a wife fighting for her home. I was a CEO protecting her company, a mother protecting her child. I was a lioness, and they had just strayed into my territory. The next 24 hours were a blur of focused, relentless activity. My home office transformed into a command center. Eleanor set up shop at my dining room table, her laptop open, a headset on, speaking in low, precise tones to her network of legal and financial experts. Chloe, working remotely, was a digital ghost, sliding through firewalls and data archives, unearthing evidence with terrifying efficiency. Sophie, bless her innocent heart, was happily ensconced with my parents, who had driven down from the foothills at a moment's notice, their presence a silent, solid wall of support. We built our case, brick by brick. The ironclad trust agreement for the Seabrook house. The timestamped security footage of Julian and Veronica removing my belongings, including a collection of Pacific Northwest art I had acquired for the house, all purchased through Hearthstone Textiles, all meticulously documented as corporate assets. Then came the emails. Julian's own words, a litany of his insecurity and jealousy. In one email to a college friend from 3 years ago, he'd written, "It's getting awkward. Clara's little weaving project is now officially worth more than my entire career at Zenith. Hard to be the man of the house when your wife's hobby is out-earning you." His ego was a gaping wound, and I now had the salt to pour into it. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered, putting it on speaker for Eleanor to hear. Julian's voice, tight with fury, crackled through. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Clara? My lawyers just received a notice about the house." He laughed, a short, ugly sound. "You can't win this. I've already filed for a full forensic audit of Hearthstone Textiles. It was built on my connections, my business acumen. When I'm done, you'll be lucky to have a market stall left." Then his voice dropped, turning venomous. "And don't think for a second I won't fight for full custody of Sophie. Veronica is wonderful with her, a natural mother. A judge will see that." A chill of pure terror went through me, but I glanced at Eleanor. She calmly slid her laptop toward me, displaying an email she had just uncovered. It was from Julian to his father, dated last year. "To be honest, Dad, I don't know what to do with Clara's business. She doesn't need my advice. It's grown far beyond anything I could have imagined." A direct contradiction to the lies he was now spewing. I kept my voice level, a feat of immense self-control. "Julian, I've just sent a document to your lawyer. I suggest you look at it before you ever threaten me about my daughter again." I had forwarded him the email to his father. "Call off your auditors, Julian. Or the next email goes to your boss." There was a moment of stunned silence, then the line went dead. Chloe's face appeared on my laptop screen via video call, her expression grim. "Clara, Eleanor. You need to see this." She shared her screen. It was a leaked internal press release from Zenith Solutions, slated to go public the next morning. Zenith Solutions proud to announce Julian Croft as new Chief Financial Officer. It was all happening. The affair, the theft, the corporate maneuvering, it was all a calculated cleanup operation before his coronation. He was trying to sever all ties to his old life, leaving me ruined and silenced in his wake. But he was moving too slowly. I was already miles ahead. Chloe swiped to another screen, the final, devastating piece of the puzzle. It was an email chain between Veronica and her father, Arthur Kane. Veronica wrote, "Julian is in. He's secured access to their server protocols. Once he's CFO, he'll be able to feed us Hearthstone Textiles' Q4 expansion strategy in real time. We can anticipate their move into the European market and get there first." Arthur Kane's reply was chillingly pragmatic. "Good. The board is getting nervous about Hearthstone Textiles' market share. Their ethical sourcing model is making us look bad and costing us investors. Neuter them. I'll handle the fallout." I felt sick. I remembered the nights I'd brought Julian tea in the home office, believing he was working hard for our family, when in reality he was sitting there plotting the destruction of my life's work. I looked at the small, framed photo of my father on my desk, his kind, honest eyes looking back at me. He had been crushed by men like this. I would not be. He just tried the servers again, Chloe said, her voice tight. From the beach house. This time, our IT team let him in. I looked at her confused. What? They routed him to a dummy server, Chloe explained, a small, fierce smile playing on her lips. It looks and feels exactly like the real thing, but it's a honeypot. Every keystroke, every file he accesses, is being logged as evidence. He thinks he's stealing our secrets, but he's just building our case. I turned to Eleanor, my resolve hardening into something unbreakable. Draft an email to the entire board of directors at Zenith Solutions. Except for Arthur Kane. My voice was steady. Attach everything. The evidence of Julian's financial fraud, the security footage from the beach house, the logs from his hacking attempts, his emails, the correspondence between him and Veronica, and the email from Arthur Kane detailing his plan to commit corporate espionage against a competitor. I paused, then added one final, crucial piece. And attach this. I gave her the login for a password-protected cloud file. It was my own personal insurance policy, a file I'd been compiling for years as I managed Julian's investments. It contained meticulously researched and documented evidence of Zenith's own questionable practices, insider trading tips Julian had let slip, notes on off-the-books deals he'd boasted about after a few glasses of wine. I had collected it all, hoping I would never need it. The password, Eleanor asked, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I looked at a photo of my daughter on my desk, her face beaming. It's Sophie's birthday. All numbers, no spaces. As Eleanor clicked send, a security alert pinged on my phone. Motion detected at the Seabrook house. I pulled up the live feed on my monitor. The image was crystal clear, the audio pristine. There they were, in my beautiful great room, Julian, Veronica, and Arthur Kane himself. They were holding champagne flutes, their faces glowing with success. A toast, Arthur said, his voice booming. To my new CFO, Julian. And to my brilliant daughter, who saw the opportunity and made this all happen. Julian smirked, preening under the praise. The promotion is announced tomorrow morning. By the afternoon, our lawyers will have filed injunctions that will freeze Hearthstone Textiles accounts, pending the audit. Clara will be completely neutralized. Veronica giggled, a high, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. She's so worried about the little beach house, she has no idea about the offshore accounts. My heart stopped. Offshore? I typed a quick message to Eleanor. She nodded, already on it. Within moments, the forensic accountant confirmed it. A series of shell corporations and hidden accounts in the Cayman Islands, holding the nearly $250,000 Julian had stolen. On the screen, Arthur Kane raised his glass again. And once Hearthstone Textiles collapses, our primary obstacle in the sustainable market is gone. A clean slate. They wanted to erase me. To erase my work, my ethics, my company. I thought of the 50 employees who depended on Hearthstone Textiles, of the artisans in Peru we partnered with, of the customers who believed in what we were building. I leaned back in my chair, clutching a small, woven bird Sophie had made for me at preschool. They were celebrating their victory, oblivious to the digital bomb that had just landed in the inboxes of their entire board of directors. I whispered to the screen, a promise to the 3 smug figures basking in their stolen triumph. You picked the wrong woman. The explosion was not loud, but it was instantaneous. Through the high-definition speakers connected to the security feed, we heard the first phone ring. It was Arthur Kane's. We watched his face, ruddy with champagne and self-satisfaction, drain of all color. His expression went from triumph to confusion to pure, unadulterated panic. What do you mean, evidence? He barked into the phone. What server logs? Who sent it? Julian's phone buzzed next. He glanced at it, his smug grin faltering as he read a frantic text from a colleague on the board. The whole board has it, he stammered, looking at Arthur with wide, terrified eyes. They have everything. The emails. She knew. She knew I was trying to access her servers. Then came Veronica's turn. Her phone began to vibrate uncontrollably, a cascade of notifications from friends and gossip columnists. Her private, boastful messages about the corporate takedown had been leaked from a board member's office. Her face crumpled, the mask of sophisticated malice melting away to reveal a spoiled, frightened girl. Mascara ran in black rivers down her cheeks as she sobbed, "Daddy, they know everything." And then the final, beautiful act. The blue and red lights of police cruisers flashed across the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the room in strobing colors of justice. They hadn't just committed ethical breaches and boardroom sins, they had committed actual crimes. Financial fraud, conspiracy, corporate espionage. I watched, my hand resting on my own, untouched teacup, as two uniformed officers walked calmly into the room. Julian, his face a mask of disbelief, began shouting about his rights, about how this was his house. He was still yelling as they clicked the handcuffs into place. Arthur Kane, the powerful CEO, seemed to shrink before my eyes. He said nothing, his head bowed in defeat as an officer led him away. Veronica trailed behind them, weeping hysterically. I sat there, in the quiet of my office, listening to the gentle rain against the window. I had grown up believing that for people like my parents, for people who worked hard and lived honestly, justice was often a far-off, unattainable dream. But not today. The fallout was swift and spectacular. The Zenith board, facing a massive scandal and shareholder revolt, acted decisively. Arthur Kane was fired. Julian's CFO promotion was rescinded, and he was terminated. With a federal indictment for wire fraud and violations of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, he would never work in finance again. Veronica, stripped of her father's power and protection, became a pariah. Last I heard, she was living back in her mother's Park Avenue apartment, her influencer career in ashes. The offshore accounts were frozen and repatriated. Every single dollar Julian had stolen was returned to me, with damages and interest. The deed to the Seabrook house was corrected, my name now the only one on it, as it always should have been. Julian sent a flood of emails from a new account, filled with desperate apologies and pleas for forgiveness. I directed them, unread, to a spam folder. A week later, I drove out to the coast. I had the entire house professionally and spiritually cleansed, every trace of them erased. That evening, I sat alone on the deck, wrapped in a blanket I had woven myself, a glass of wine in my hand. Sophie was asleep upstairs, safe in her bed. The ocean whispered a song of profound and endless peace. I had fought for my daughter, for my company, and for my own soul. And I had won. In the months that followed, the story of Zenith's failed takedown became a legend in the business world. Investors, drawn to Hearthstone Textiles' proven integrity and resilience, flocked to us. We expanded into the very European markets Zenith had tried to block, our brand now synonymous with authenticity and strength. The Seabrook house became our true sanctuary, a place of healing and joy. Sophie and I built sandcastles on the same stretch of beach where Julian had plotted my downfall. We chased the waves, our laughter carried on the salty wind. Every crash of the surf on the shore felt like a cleansing, a washing away of the past. I framed a copy of Julian's original email, the one that started it all. It hangs on the wall in my office, not out of spite, but as a reminder. It's a reminder that my softness is not a weakness, but the soil from which my strength grows. It's a reminder that the world doesn't give you justice, you claim it. You build it, thread by careful thread. Sometimes, as I watch Sophie run free on the beach, her hair flying in the wind, I think of that smug photograph of Julian and his belief that he could so easily outsmart me. He never knew the woman from the small mill town who learned the value of a strong foundation. He never knew the mother who would protect her child's future with a ferocity he could never comprehend. That email was never his declaration of victory. It was simply the spark that ignited a fire he never knew I had. A fire that now lights my way forward, brighter and stronger than ever before.